Hey, Chad, welcome to the Mass Construction Show.
Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Exciting. The usual listeners might be slightly puzzled why I'm having a farmer, I guess we'll call you a farmer today, but you're kind of what I've done in the past, but to more of an extreme. Like, we have a couple episodes that I like to call like carving your own path. They're people within construction that kind of do their own thing. They have a unique job within the industry, or they jumped from one part of the industry to another, just followed their passions, for lack of a better word. I hate that term, but ended up happier because they didn't stick to the normal path in life, which is, become a project engineer and then an APM and then a PM and then a PX, and like they just broke out of that mold and ended up happier.
I think I fit that description.
Yeah, you fit that description to an extreme, because this would be for folks, if they became farmers, they would obviously be leaving construction, but at the core it is carving your own path, right? Doing your own thing. So that's where I'd like to start, which is, you were in life science. I want to call it like sales, right?
Yeah,
essentially,
sales basically in the clinical trial space. We could do a whole separate podcast on that.
Yes. And it's funny, there's all these terms that you see for sales, right? Like,
was a director of business development,
account director, customer service
basically been doing that for like 30 years. Was unemployed for 5 months, just got a new job. I start back again on Monday. So it's like my second life.
Same field?
Yeah.
Nice. So you went from life science sales, just to make it simple, to in Massachusetts, in suburbia, to a farm in New Hampshire that I explain to people as, when I walk through it, I feel like it's Dr. Dolittle. This fucking geese, like, and fucking rabbits and shit. Like, there's every animal, and they're just like wandering around, right? It's not like everything's all cooped up, and there's a friggin' sawmill and a greenhouse with jerry-rigged things all over the place. And I love it. It's amazing. You hit a spring, and now you have a spring-fed pond, and like, you are not dipping the toe in the water. You just fucking stripped naked and jumped in.
Yeah.
Why?
So I'll give you a little bit of my background, sort of like how I got here, but a couple of my mottos to tune in there is, one is, don't let perfect be the enemy of good enough. Don't wait till everything is perfect, because you'll be waiting forever. Like, we kind of joke that when, like, my friends are waiting for like the perfect vehicle to get to the destination, and I'm gonna grab the little Yugo
bike and
Yugo with some duct tape, and I'll be there before they even get their car on the road. And that's kind of, and I don't talk about things very long before I do them. So like to you, I stripped naked and jumped right in. And when we did this, when we first moved up to New Hampshire, and we brought our 10 chickens from suburbia, that's the gateway animal to full-blown farm. And then we got 6 sheep and 4 goats and a couple of bunnies, and that was the summer of 2018. So then fast forward to last year,
you beat the rush.
We were just in time before the craziness of 2020. But last year we had 56 lambs born on the farm. So
amazing.
We jump right in. We raise about 300 chickens, meat birds, a year. We've got a flock of 60 layers. Got a couple dozen geese, probably 3 dozen ducks, dozen bunnies. We raise a bunch of turkeys. We've got emus hatching on the farm right now.
Oh, wonderful.
A friend of mine is staying with us and hatching emus, so we're probably going to hang on to a couple of those.
So that's amazing.
Yeah.
How about, you usually talk about the type of, is it the type of sheep or the type of goat that you raise? Kind of like a unique one?
Yeah, so we have, for goats we have,
Katahdin.
Well, Katahdins are the sheep, but we have Boer goats and we have Nubian goats. So 2 different kinds. One's more for meat, one's for milk. The dairy goats are the Nubians. But we also have crosses where we bred the 2 together.
Oh, interesting.
And it's interesting because then the boys, that we generally eat the boys, sell the girls, breed the girls. The boys are taller, like a Nubian, but they are stockier frame, like more meat on them, like a Boer.
Interesting.
So, and yet most of the girls with the good milk genetics, we've had one of our crosses, she's a 50-50. Her udder is like the size of a basketball. So, I mean, her milk genetics are awesome. But the Katahdins, the cool thing about the Katahdins, so if we flash back to 2016, we bought our little cabin in the woods. It was a weekend getaway place. We lived an hour south of there. We're in Air, Massachusetts. We were in suburbia. Spent my whole life in suburbia. We finally got a garden in like 2006 or 7. My parents always had a garden. But then when my wife and I got married and we moved into our own place, it was like, what? Why are we going to have a garden? It's so much work. Like, just go to the grocery store and just get our food at the grocery store. So we adopted a couple of our kids from Ukraine, and that was an eye-opening experience because when you got out in the countryside of Ukraine, there were no grocery stores. They ate seasonally like our great-grandparents did. Nobody's eating bananas in February. And they had root cellars, and they ate what they canned and what they grew, and they bartered, and nobody has a lawn. There's no manicured lawns. It's flower beds and herb beds and gardens, and that's kind of the way they live. So that sort of inspired us. And so we got a garden, and also kind of driven by my wife's realization that she was suffering from Crohn's and largely from diet and all the crap that we were eating and the preservatives and the salt and sugar and all the stuff that's in commercially produced food. Kind of joke if you're shopping in the grocery store and you're buying things in a box that come from the middle of the store that like barely passes for food.
No, absolutely. Like you're preaching to the choir here with me. And so it was a vacation spot and some gateway drug chickens.
Yeah. And the third weekend, we were up there staying in this little 900 square foot cabin with our 2 dogs and our 2 youngest boys that were, they were in 8th grade at the time when we bought the place. And we looked at each other. I said, we should just move out here. We should just move. So that was December of 16. And we put a plan in place. We're giving ourselves a year and a half, 18 months to purge all of the junk that we didn't need and fix up our house that we'd lived in for 20 years. And it was all contractor grade shit that we had never upgraded, the towel bars and the toilet paper holders and the floors and all that stuff. So that was our journey over the next year and a half. But at the same time, we were clearing land at the cabin. The lot went up for sale next door, found out it was an old homestead that used to be 2 lots, or used to be 1 lot, and then divided up for the great-grandkids. So we acquired that lot again, did a lot line adjustment, so the cabin now sits on 3 acres, and that left a 58-acre lot next door for the farm. Amazing. So we cleared, we started from scratch, we started from woods, and we built a barn. Everybody said, build the barn before you build the house, or you never build the barn. So we built the barn, and we lived in the little cabin. We moved in July of 18 with our 10 chickens, got those sheep and goats and got some bunnies, and that just kind of started it.
Back.
We got the greenhouse, so now we can grow food year-round. We can have fresh greens in February in the greenhouse, which is amazing. There's some cool things you can do where you don't need any external heat sources.
Yeah, I was shocked. Like, it was a cold day, and it was raw, and it was wet, and it was cold. And I remember walking in the greenhouse, and it was like humid tropics.
Yeah. It's crazy.
Pretty impressive.
Yeah. So if you make a little greenhouse in there, so you have a greenhouse in a greenhouse, that never frosts. Even when it's 10 below outside, you do not get frost in that little low tunnel that's in there because of the humidity, and the temperature stays at least 10 or 15 degrees warmer, and the humidity is near 100%. So your spinach and all that stuff will survive through the winter. Yeah,
to walk from outside into inside, it's like so shocking because you're like, it's like, oh my God, it's just bone chilling cold, and then you walk inside, you're like, wait, like how's this possible? This is just plastic, right? And obviously you got a few other contraptions going on. But you talk about our great-grandparents or our grandparents, and it's funny, I often talk with my friends that are into this stuff, and I really feel like it was like things so much got lost in the baby boom.
One generation.
In that baby boomer generation in particular, because it was, I could remember as a kid, very young kid even, being like, there was a switch to like, oh, wow, we can have like TV dinners and canned food, and oh, you can put it in the microwave. And, so my parents were saying, oh, well, my mother used to have to spend this many hours in the kitchen. This is just so much easier. And it was this push for speed and convenience. That was kind of what was in at the moment. And everybody rushed. And I remember like resonating more with what my grandparents were doing. My parents were just running away from what my grandparents were doing. But I remember even as a little kid, and even I was lucky enough, my great-grandmother lived, well into her 90s. So I got to know her, and she came from Italy and still really didn't even speak much English. And just seeing my grandmother and her, like they would say, oh, hey, she would take seeds from the squash, walk out back with her hands, dig a little hole, throw it in the ground, and then a short time later, there's a plant, and and you've got all the squash growing. And I remember going around at the end of the summer, and like she had all this, like these Cosmo gardens, and she would send me out to pick all of the dried seeds off of them and put them in a bag, and then go plant them the next season. Just those little things about like saving the seeds, and just rather than wasting what was inside the squash, it was like, well, let's plant that, and then we can have squash from it. Or let's dry and put them in a pan and make, everyone knows pumpkin seeds, but you can do it with any squash, right? So you have all these salted like little seeds, and then you start to read about it, and it's like an amazing source of magnesium, and they taste fantastic.
Yeah, like, nobody really took vitamins back then.
No, you didn't need to. Then we could get into like the whole soil depletion problem we're having right now. But in just thinking like the thought process there about not wasting, and the how much healthier it was, and just also understanding, it got me to understand where food came from. Now, granted, it was just plants; it wasn't animals at this point, right? So it's like so much of that just got thrown in the dustbin of history, and people are now trying to rediscover it. And even just traditions, like this stuff matters. Like I remember, again, this was the Italian side of the family. There would be different desserts for different holidays. And they used to make this, this pie it's like a bread. And they would take on Easter, and you'd have a hard-boiled egg that would go on top of the bread. And then they would have like 2 strips of dough that went over the top. And it was like an Easter bread, they called it. And like my parents couldn't be bothered with like ever baking that or go into that. But then I remember talking with my grandmother, and she's like, yeah, so the egg symbolizes rebirths, right? And then over the top, which you just think is like you look at it as decorative, but what it really is it's a cross, right? So it's new birth through the cross, right? So I'm not saying anybody should be a Christian, right? But the fact that there's like symbolism and tradition and like reasons behind all this stuff.
Intention.
Yeah. And like things got shared over generations and generations and generations. And then it was like, not to throw this all on the baby boomers, like everybody's probably a little guilty, but that one generation, it seemed like, it's like, just forget all of that.
Yeah.
And then what happened after that generation? Obesity, cancer, like
diabetes,
diseases on a rocket ship.
Right.
And not all on the generation, but then, corporations and everything. So I'm stealing the whole podcast.
No, that's right.
But like you said it when you were talking about what you saw in Ukraine and what you saw with your grandparents, like that all ended up in the dustbin. And that was such a like tragedy.
Yeah. So my parents are going to be 80 this year. And my dad, when he was little, has got the stories, and even talking to my grandma, who was born in 1912, talking to her a lot when I was little, like her job, she was 6 years old, and it was her job, hey, go get a chicken for dinner. And she'd go out there at 6 years old and kill a chicken and get it ready for dinner. And so then even up to when my dad was little, they would they'd go to Rural King or whatever the little, store was. It's like our version of like a Blue Seal or something like that. And they would buy baby chicks, and they had an incubator in the garage with the light bulb. And then when the chicks were a couple weeks old, they would move them to the next level down, which was taller, and then this. And by the time they were 6 weeks old, they were ready to process, and Grandpa would sharpen his hatchet, and Grandma would sharpen a knife, and they'd have a pot of boiling water, and Grandpa would cut the head off the chicken, and it would run flopping around the yard, and they would part those chickens up and put them in the freezer. And that's how they got their chicken. If they wanted beef, they went to the farmer, and the farmer said, which cow do you want? And they'd pick the cow, and he'd shoot it, then drag it over and gut it and cut it up, and they would take it home and package it. And like that's how you got your meat. And in just one generation, we went to TV dinners and microwaves and the convenience, and nobody had gardens. And even today, that's why Ukraine was such a wake-up call, because I realized that, upwards of 90% of the people that don't live in a city anywhere in the world live like our grandparents did. They have root cellars, they barter, they store food, they eat seasonally. Nobody's getting pineapples or, the one of the key things that shaped me is a book called Omnivore's Dilemma. If you guys haven't heard of the book, you should go get it. It's life-changing, but it's about our food chain, the commercial food chain, the organic food chain, like Wegmans and Whole Foods and all that, which is largely a scam when you look into to what really organic means and what you're allowed to do as a certified organic grower and that kind of thing. And then sort of the local food, like what I produce, and then foraging, hunting and foraging. And most people are just so far removed from that, they don't have any idea of what it takes. And yet our grandparents and even my parents did. And so seeing this wake-up call of the Ukraine trip and how everybody lives really drove us to a more like meaningful life. And I teach classes. People come and learn how to raise and process chickens. I'm probably going to do one here in the next month or two of processing a lamb. And it's very different than processing a chicken, because lambs are way cuter than chickens. They don't have any more value as a living being than a chicken, but we put that on them. And I'm not a professional butcher, but if you were to go hunting and get a deer yourself, I'm going to show you how to cut it up and turn it into meat that can go into your freezer. It's not going to be beautiful pork chops and lamb chops and that kind of thing, but these skills that we've lost. And so trying to inspire people to do that and learn to do this. And so I teach these chicken classes. And
No, I was going to say, so in full disclosure, like I did the lamb with you.
Yeah.
And that's what got me to want to push you to even do this, right? Because it's probably coming through on the microphone, but anyone that's spent any time with you, you're passionate about this, and it's such a great opportunity to know where your food comes from.
Right.
And a big underlying theme of Omnivore's Dilemma was I believe the author's Michael Pollan, right? And usually don't have a good memory recall, but I remember him.
Yep.
And his thing was, if I'm going to eat meat, I should be able to kill the animal.
Yeah.
Right. And that's his dilemma, right? Do I have that ability? Like if I'm going to sit there and have steak on the plate, I should be able to do that. And so to be part of the process and see that it is actually humane, right? And lamb's getting to eat a treat before you it's powerful. And being candid, like going in, like I remember thinking like, okay, like I don't know how difficult this is going to be. I hadn't done it before. Like my parents were city kids on top of it, right? Yeah. Like my mom grew up in the projects. Like this wasn't like, this is, I've never caught a fish in my life. I've never, like, that's just.
So you're like the perfect example. And I tell this a lot. The people that come to my classes, the people that come to learn about chickens. And it was big back in 2020 when people realized how fragile the system was, and maybe you couldn't go to the grocery store and get chicken, and maybe I should raise some chickens. But so your people around us in society are kind of lumped into three categories that I've kind of divided them up.
The Chad categories.
Yeah, so there's, I don't want to think about it. I don't really know or care where meat comes from. I go to the grocery store where I know animals are killed, and I buy my food at the grocery store. I get the good eggs, the good clean eggs at the grocery store, and that nice, beautiful red salmon that's died, by the way, and raised in a shitty net in some aqua farm or whatever. Yeah. But I'm going to go buy my meat where no animals are killed. Or, all right, I know that animals are dying and they probably lived in really shitty conditions, but I really don't want to think about it. I'll let somebody else do it. I'm going to accept that animals are dying, but I don't want to deal with it. Or the third is I'm going to take responsibility. And so I put myself into that category. I mean, I grew up hunting and fishing. I was cleaning fish when I was 8, 9, 10 years old. And then I remember the first time that I shot a squirrel myself and had to clean it, and it freaked me out because it was warm compared to a fish. It was very different.
Yep.
And then the first time that I took a class in 2017 learning how to process a chicken. And it wasn't about raising chickens. It was just, here's how you kill a chicken and turn it into looking like it came from the grocery store. And I put my hand on this chicken and slit its throat with a knife, and that affected me. Like, because I shot animals with bows and guns and killed many fish with a knife, but this was different. And so,
as it should,
yeah,
right?
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of people that come to my class have never even cleaned a fish before, and yet they want to do it. And I tell them, I'm like, look, you're going to watch me kill this chicken, and it don't think that I'm desensitized. I'm at peace with it, because now, I mean, this summer I will kill my 2,000th chicken, because we've been doing 300 chickens every summer since 2018. And I'm at peace with it, because I was with that chicken every single day of its life, from when it was a day old to 8 weeks later when it's an 8-pound chicken. I mean, believe it or not, you go to Shaw's and buy a rotisserie chicken for $6. That's like a 6-week-old chicken. A Cornish game hen is a 4-week-old chicken.
So I want to, that's where I want to go next. And this was, you talk about chickens being the gateway drug. To some extent, it ends up being the gateway drug for me via the gateway drug to Chad.
Yeah.
Which was, you were at a farmer's market, you and Deb. I was there with my family, we were walking around. I noticed rabbits written on the little whiteboard that you had. And I was like, I could go for rabbits. You can't always get them or whatever. So I went over, and I remember opening up the cooler, and I didn't see any rabbits. So I said, hey, I'm like, do you guys have any rabbits, or are you out or whatever? You're like, I'm out, but you should try this chicken, right? He's like, but fair one, you can't roast this thing in the oven. You're going to have to stew it. But
rooster. Yep.
But I guarantee it's going to be the best tasting chicken you've ever had. And then it ended up being about an hour-long masterclass in raising chickens and what's wrong with the system now. And I knew a lot of things wrong, but like the broiler chicken, right? That was fascinating, right? So what is the status? What's there? What happens in that process for commercially raised chickens?
I can tie Ukraine back in a little bit here too, because in 2001, when we adopted our son, we were in a little village outside of Mariupol, Ukraine, and my wife and I had our translator with us, and he had left to go back, so we were on our own, and we looked at the menu, and I knew the word for chicken. I can't even remember the name, the Ukrainian word for it, but it was chicken. And so they brought the chicken, and it was an unrecognizable. It was a leg thigh quarter, but it was unrecognizable, because the thigh was like this. It was a leg with this thing on it, like this. And I didn't even know what it was. And I was like, it's a chicken leg, I guess, because they're heritage breed, free-range chickens. They're not these Purdue oven stuffer roaster broiler chickens.
But let me guess. In Ukraine, they're not calling them free-range heritage.
Yeah, no,
they're just calling them chicken. Yeah.
And so, when we got into this and we realized your average backyard layer chicken, if you have a rooster, if you clean him, he doesn't look anything like that rotisserie chicken you get at Shaw's. Why is that? Well, because that rotisserie chicken at Shaw's is likely something like a Cornish cross, which is a protected genetic variant where X crossed with Y gives you Z, and Z is a dead end because it's going to die of a heart attack by the time it's 3 or 4 months old, because it's genetically altered so that it just eats. It doesn't have a switch telling its brain to stop eating because it's full. And they grow just ridiculous. Their food conversion is 2 to 1. If you give it 2 pounds of food, it gains a pound of muscle. So you take a cute little puffball baby chick, and 8 weeks later, the thing is 8 pounds. but that's if you raise it correctly. Because when you come, you haven't been to one of our chicken classes.
No.
So this spring, come to one of our chicken classes, because when we clean this chicken and you see the liver, which is dark purple, and the heart is big and healthy and beautiful, and their gizzard is full of gravel, because I raised them out in a field. And I would challenge you, when I show you what's in this gizzard, to go out in that field and find one of those little granite pebbles. You can't. The chickens find them. It's crazy. Their gizzards are full of gravel, and that means that they're healthy because they're grinding up their food and processing their food. So these chickens, when you raise them that way, are super healthy, and you have to run them down to catch them when it's time to process them. They're big and healthy.
But I think you skipped over, and forgive me if you're going to it, which is like that Cornish hen cross, or whatever the right word is there. At 6 weeks, 8 weeks, whatever it is, it gets to the point where it can't walk anymore under its own, raised in commercial.
Or in commercial. Yeah, exactly.
In a commercial setting, can no longer walk because it is so heavy. It will fall down and die of a heart attack if you don't process it at that point.
Yeah, exactly. And so like on your homestead scale, right, we'll have people bring they're like, ooh, a neighbor says, hey, we raised some Cornish cross. Can I bring them on your processing day? Because we've got a scalder and a plucker and all that stuff. And they bring them over, and you put the chicken down, he can't even stand up. He can't run away from you. Like, just put him down right there, and we'll pick him up in a minute, and we'll kill him because they didn't raise them correctly. And if you put them down, and he's got food here, and he's got water here, he's going to eat, drink, die of a heart attack right there. He won't move. He does not encourage.
You're not, like, you're not being hyperbolic here.
No.
Literally, essentially will eat themselves to death, blow up massively, and his legs are not strong enough to hold up their own weight, and die.
Yeah.
We can swear on this podcast, by the way. That's fucked up.
That's commercial food chain.
Yes.
Yeah.
And like, that is so stunning when you hear that. And that's why when like you can look at something and taste something and just like taste the difference. Just going back 15 years ago, we started getting a CSA.
Yeah.
And like the chicken was the biggest noticeable difference in things.
Yeah.
It's like, wow, this chicken, like, it does not taste like the stuff I was getting in the store. And it's hard to go back.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
It totally corrupts you. Yeah.
And, but then.
Corrupts you in a good way.
Yeah. But I liked your style. So you take a similar bird and you separate their food and water. To tell the product, like, how do you?
Yeah. So what do you do? So when those people would bring their birds to me, they're like, "Oh, we're going to bring them." They bring these giant, 10-pound Cornish chickens that are 10 weeks old and they can't even stand up. And I'm like, "Well, how did you feed them?" Well, I just kept their food full. Well, they're going to eat them. They overate and they're not healthy. So what I do from the very beginning is I put their food at one end and their water at the other, when they're in a pen before they can move out to the field. Mm-hmm. So they have to walk. So they're walking from day one. And generally, out of 100 birds, I might lose 2 or 3 over the course of 8 weeks. Yeah. Versus if you have them commercially, like you could lose half of them easy by letting them overeat, not restricting their food, not measuring out how much food you're giving them, not getting them on grass. Like when I put them out on the field, they're in a big fenced pasture with a shade mobile. Mm-hmm. So they're not even in a cage. They're in a big fenced area, and I move that fence once a week, and I move their shelter every day because they all congregate under there, and they poop a ton, and they can mm-hmm. Burn the grass and all that. But let me tell you what your pasture looks like after you raise chickens this way. It's kind of this whole permaculture mindset where the animals and the plants all work together. I have 0 external inputs on my farm. I don't bring any fertilizer in. I don't bring any dirt, compost, soil. If you look, and this is a huge problem in Massachusetts and Maine and Vermont, all these certified organic compost companies that are buying the certified organic biosludge waste from the government, and they're putting that on their property, and it's contaminating their wells, public water supplies. It's ruining their organic farms with the PFAS chemicals and stuff in there. So I'm like, you can't trust anything.
No.
Just go to the store and buy organic. Well, look into what that really means, and then look into the white papers and how it's all bullshit.
Yeah, you want to think this sounds wild, but even when I was in West Roxbury, and my lot was 5,000 square feet. So that does not include, then there's the house on it, in the garage, and the driveway. So green space was limited, but I had a compost pile behind my garage.
Yeah.
And I would build that up, and that's how I created a raised bed. I started with an 8-foot by 4-foot stone-walled raised bed, and as I would get more soil, I would grow the thing and grow the thing, grow thing. But like, I would like the food scraps, I would be like, if that's not organic, peels from zucchini, like that's not going in my compost pile. Right. I just not doing it.
Yeah.
Right. And that seems like over the top, but that's what we're dealing with.
It's sort of like the organic thing. Like, if you didn't grow it yourself and know what's in it, it's not organic. And if you ask people, so here they went to Whole Foods and they bought a chicken. They bought Rosie, right? There's a label on it and it tells about her life, and she lived in a pasture, and it was like rainbows and unicorns, and she was frolicking in a pasture. Like, that's all nonsense. She just lived in a bigger cage. Cage-free eggs, $12 a dozen. I got news for you. They live in a bigger cage.
Yes.
So what we've done, and with the chicken that you ate, which is a rooster. So the problem with those Cornish crosses is you can't breed them yourself. It's a protected thing. That chicken's never going to get to the age where it can lay an egg for you or be inseminated by by a rooster. So you can't sustainably grow those, but you can grow heritage breed layer chickens, and you can buy dual purpose breeds. So they're like big, meaty, egg-laying birds that are probably going to lay like 3, 4, 5 eggs a week, maybe at their peak, versus 7 eggs a week for a dedicated layer breed that does not have the big meaty frame. But so that's kind of what we've developed. And so we'll hatch like 200 chicks a year. Half of them are roosters. So those 100 roosters we raise until they're about 6, 7 months old, and then we process them, and that's what you bought from us. So the difference is you've got an 8-week-old chicken that lived in a field and got most of its energy from a commercial chicken feed. People ask me, is it organic? I'm like, what does that mean to you? Come to my farm and see these chickens in a green pasture. You're going to say, like, yeah, that's what I want. Unless I am growing organic feed myself, I'm not going to pay double for this certified organic feed, which probably still has glyphosate and everything in it anyway, but I'm going to charge you double for this organic label, which doesn't really mean anything. When you eat one of these chickens that lived like that, it's so much better than anything in the store. But so now contrast that with this rooster, which was born on my farm, hatched on my farm, and it lived like a chicken for 7 months. The flavor of that chicken compared to even one of my broilers that's only 8 weeks old living in a field is unbelievable for pulled chicken stew, soup, carnitas, whatever.
Yeah, you even see the color of it.
Yeah.
It looks closer to like a game bird, like almost like the more like purplish hues on the dark meat.
And a retired layer, right? A layer that's 5 years old that's not laying. She's not going to have as much meat on her, but she's going to look exactly like that rooster does when you cook her.
Yeah.
There's sustainable meat on a little homestead backyard scale.
Yeah, and you like, there's so many like terms that fly around, but like even just the concept of regenerative agriculture. Right. That's kind of what you're talking about. And people might even ask, like, what is regenerative agriculture? It's just like, okay, well, is it something where the agricultural process is making the land better? You're regenerating things, right? You're having like the classic Joel Salatin where he talks about the cycle of like the chickens are out first. No, excuse me, the cows are out first. They graze, they poop, then they move on to the next spot, and then the chicken come in, they eat the bugs out of the poop.
Distribute it. And scratch up, poop.
Turn it over, they poop, and what's in chicken poop is different nutrients than what's in cow poop. So now you've got this great like fertilizer that's produced by the animals. The grass is feeding the cows, the poop from the cows is creating bugs that's feeding the chickens. And then you end up with this lush green pasture that is healthier for the cows that come along the next time. Like, I think that book right behind you, Nutritional and Physical Degeneration, that is a dentist from the 1920s who went around studying all like kind of indigenous population. And it was funny. There was a few themes that, and this was so fascinating. Like, he saw indigenous people like in Alaska, in the mountains of Europe, Africa, South America, and there was just themes that were the same with all the indigenous people. And it's no way they communicated it with right? Because the people that are in the Alaskan tundra are not talking to the people in Africa, right? But like a couple of the themes were when couples were looking to have children, the tribe would give those women organ meats. So when they would kill an animal, those people would get the organ meats. And then there was one that talked about, and I remember thinking, I read that probably a long time ago. This was first when like grass-fed became popular. They talked about the best products to eat was dairy from animals that ate tall, lush greens. And I'm like, the indigenous people will talk about fucking grass-fed meat and dairy and butter like thousands of years ago, right? So now you're creating that pasture with super healthy grass, soil that has minerals. It has, I want to say microbiome, but bacteria.
Yeah, right.
Healthy bacteria.
Microorganisms,
Thank you.
Yeah.
Healthy grass that is nutritious, and that grass is being eaten by the cow, so that cow is healthy and has nutrients, and it's just regenerative in that way. Right. And what you're doing is that.
Yeah, it's that model. And you compare that to commercial agriculture. I was born in Illinois. If you've ever driven out I-70 through Illinois into St. Louis, it's just miles and miles and miles of cornfields. And as you drive through there, you'll see that the rows are labeled with what strain of corn it is, because it's all genetically engineered corn from Monsanto and whoever, and it's all these different strains for whatever purpose. And like, it's not even food. It's a product that they're going to harvest and turn into 200 different products, and then they're going to make cereals out of it, and they're going to make
and it's going to go in your gas tank.
Your gas tank. And anything that says corn or soy lecithin, which is in like 90% of the products on the grocery store in a box, that all has glyphosate in it, because those all those plants are genetically modified to just spray the shit out of them
and
with herbicides, and they won't die. So like that to me is just it's
broken.
Yeah, it's a broken system. And so where I was going with that is the land that stuff is grown in. That's not even soil. It's dirt. It's like a growing medium that they dump tons of herbicides and fertilizers, artificial chemical fertilizers and stuff. And all those herbicides then are making it into the water supplies. And so then it's affecting the whole entire food chain with chemicals like glyphosate and atrazine that have all kinds of like hormonal interference 1,000%. In all of the wildlife, including the people who eat them.
Yep.
So it's no wonder that we're so unhealthy. And I don't know, with the political changes afoot, whether RFK is going to really be able to make a difference in some of that stuff. It's a very powerful entity, and I don't know if we can make a difference other than at the local level and learning, teaching people, getting them to grow their own food and see what it's like to pick a ripe heirloom tomato off the vine in July. And the people that come and try that, a lot of people have never even tried that before, because what you buy at the grocery store doesn't even classify as a tomato when you try to real one. And little kids, and we pull a carrot out of the ground, and there's little kids that don't even know that a carrot comes out of the ground. It's like, whoa, that's food? That's crazy.
Yeah, and I think, I kind of feel like so many people have woken up to a lot of this stuff recently, but I think I overestimate how much progress has been made. I'm just around it so much, so I think, everybody's picking up on this, but there's still a large swath of people that are in that place, right, where they don't understand. I've had people that were confused that, like, I keep seeds from stuff that I've planted years before.
Right.
They're like, well, where'd you get those seeds? Well, I got them from the prior plants. I just let the lettuce go to seed. They're like, you can get seeds from lettuce?
There are immigrants that came over here in the 1800s from like Ireland and places that had the heirloom seeds from their grandparents sewn into the hems of their clothing and smuggled those seeds in here because it was such a family treasure that they would plant those every year. And there's little groups that trade those seeds, and you can basically get a seed that goes back like 600 years. It's been handed down and handed down and handed down. I mean, it's just crazy.
Yeah.
It's really cool.
Yeah, and just the fact that people are so unaware. I'm like, well, how did you think lettuce reproduced? Right? Like it only comes in a little envelope that you could
Walmart.
Yeah, like, you know, from Burpee. Like Burpee like produces the seeds, and they make the seeds in a factory. Like, and like I'm making light of it, but also like, what do you expect when someone, and this sounds like I'm again, I'm not disparaging anybody, but like, what do you expect from someone that has grown up in a cul-de-sac in suburbia, shopping at Wegmans or Stop and Shop their entire life, and not seeing a garden or not being part of it, or maybe seeing, oh, I know that person, they garden, they're a gardener, right? And like, we've gotten so far removed. It's dangerous though.
Well, I feel like it's by design. Like we talked about, just the one generation, my parents, that went from when they were little eating seasonally with the root cellars and cans and you know, hams hanging in the shed in August that are fine, that have been salted for 5 years. So we've lost all of that because of the convenience, but also getting people away from that and condensing people into the cities. It's a lot easier to control the population and control people when you're in control of the food, and when they're in tight areas where they can't produce their own food.
Or what can you sell? What could you sell me that, in that case, was creating my own soil through a compost, right? Saving seeds from the year before. Like, what are you going to sell me? You can sell me a shovel and some fencing.
Right.
But not seeds, not fertilizer, not pesticides, not seedlings, like, right? So in order to have stuff to sell to people, you need to have like a disconnected system, right? And if you're going to garden, you're going to have to get some Miracle Grow, and you're going to get this plastic thing that you're going to hook onto the end of the hose and spray the blue shit all over your vegetables, right? Like, and even like watering I'm going to now really sound like a fucking crazy person, but even watering is essentially a farce. For the past 5 or 6 years, I stopped watering my garden, and everyone is going to say, oh, no, I've stopped watering, and a week later my plants are dead. What happened is, when you water a plant, you surface water, right? So if you water your tomato plants, you surface water. So what happens? The roots grow where the water is. They grow on the surface, and then you don't water it, and then those roots burn and they die. If you do not water it, what does the roots do?
Grow deeper.
They grow deeper to get the water, and that's where they have their water source. And then you let rain and nature take its course. And 5 years of none of my plants died. I wasn't out there with a hose. I wasn't setting up a sprinkler and moving the thing around. And I just let nature take its course. Because if you think about it, why does the forest and all the other stuff out in nature, why doesn't that stuff all die? No one's walking out there with a hose and spraying it every day, right? We were talking about autumn olives earlier. Why don't autumn olives should just all burn to death because there's nobody that goes out and with a watering can in the woods and waters them. So, I think, I hate to keep using so far removed, but that's what it is. Like, we've become so far removed, and it's this weird process that you need to read a book and buy stuff from stores to be able to create food, and you don't really need that. And yes, you need to learn, right? If it's been removed, you haven't been raised that way, you might need a book at first, right, to get going. But I think you're better off talking to someone that's done it, because that book, who wrote the book?
Right.
Was
there an agenda? Yeah.
And was it, is it as simple as, this Home Depot 1, 2, 3 book, you could read that to learn how to do something, but conveniently everything in the book is sold by Home Depot, right? So there's anything wrong with that book, but like, just that's the reality. Right. So the idea of supporting a farm like yours is just tremendously important to me, that regenerative nature. And I know I'm going like super deep in the weeds, no pun intended, but like, those little things matter, right? That soil you're talking about out in Indiana, you said Indiana, right? Illinois. Same thing, right?
Same thing.
That is a completely extractive process.
Right.
That is just damaging and pulling everything of value and health out of the soil versus the opposite of you go to a farm that is putting life back into the soil, raising the animals rightly, good English, Joe, producing food that's healthier for you. And we were talking earlier before the mics went on, and you were even talking about the water, from your ground, and how, there's minerals that you're getting because of, you had an artesian well and then a dug well and the minerals, and you hit a spring, and to be thinking about, hey, what's the minerals in my water, and what are the chemicals that are in there from atrazine or glyphosate?
Right, and I live in the middle of nowhere. So, it's miles in any direction before you hit paved roads or any kind of other residential development. I don't have any neighborhoods near me. I have country roads with houses, every mile or so, a little more densely in some areas. But, to drink something like this, I never drink this water anymore. It doesn't.
I don't even like to give it to people. I had a class, so I had to have some water here.
Yeah, and I didn't bring any with me, but when we have water from our dug well, which is basically surface water collected in an 18-foot deep hole, and then we put in an artesian well for the house when we built the house next door, and we have 15 gallons a minute just flowing out of the ground. So we kind of joke at our house, when you run the water and you want it to get cold, there's no such thing as wasting water, because there's 15 gallons a minute flowing out of the well that we can't shut off. Yep. It's going into the pond, and then the pond overflows and goes down and flows into a stream. So that's just amazing. And having that water that's aerated naturally by flowing in, and it's mixing artesian water with the surface water, it's probably the best water that you could be drinking. And there's no pollution, for miles.
Yeah. The classes, right? So you run, it's pretty cold to do it at the moment, but you at least used to run kind of more regular chicken processing classes.
Yep.
And then you're kind of flirting with the idea, and you and I were actually, last time I was over there, brainstorming a little bit about the lambs, right?
Yeah. Yep.
And if people are interested and they're listening, and that sounds like something where they would want to learn about, kind of where their food comes from, and to get an opportunity to, to both purchase the lamb that they can have for meat, and we're actually keeping the hide.
Oh, awesome.
We have it all salted, and it's been frozen out in the shed for the moment.
Yeah,
and,
awesome.
We got all the products to get it to a lambskin kind of thing.
Nice.
And that's obviously not a financial thing. That's more of a, hey, let's try this.
Yeah,
and see what
absolutely.
They're pretty cool. Is that something that, if I said, hey, reach out to me or you, and let's find out if people are interested, and then,
Yeah, we could absolutely organize something through you. We do the chicken class 3 times a year. So we raise those broilers 3 times a summer. First batch we pick up as baby chicks in around mid-April, and then basically 8 weeks later we process them. We usually stagger a little bit, so 3 or 4 weeks later we'll get our second batch, and then 3 or 4 weeks later get our third batch. So the last batch usually gets processed in mid-August. We've pushed it as far as mid-September, but you're starting to get a little bit colder, and I like to kind of just be done with things by then. But we do those 3 batches. Each time that we do the processing, we teach the class, and the class is about an hour and a half or 2 hours, and there's sort of a 1-hour lecture covering some of the things we've been talking about, but also a tour and showing you how to properly raise them. Because as I mentioned, if you don't raise them properly, it's no better than what you're getting in the store. Well, it's still better than what you're getting in the store, but it's not as healthy as what could be if you're raising them properly. So we do that whole thing, and then we process them, and the students actually pick up a chicken and process it and package it and take it home with them as part of the class.
And I think I've heard you say in the past, I don't know if you're still doing it, but you would actually give course materials.
They get a book. They get a book a booklet that I put together to take with them. So what I started to mention earlier, when I first went and killed that chicken in 2017 myself, that wasn't a chicken raising class. That was, here's how you kill a chicken. And it was basically, here's the steps to kill the chicken, and take the crop out and make sure that it's cleaned properly, and then put it in a package, in a bag, and shrink wrap it. But that's the least important part. I could give you a chicken and say, here's a chicken, you need to turn it into food. Like, you'd figure it out. It's not that hard. It's nice to have somebody show you how to do it the right, efficient way, and you can obviously tweak it a little bit, but I've done...
And you have a plucker.
2,000. We have a plucker and a scalder because we do it on a larger scale, but our grandparents didn't. My grandparents had a pot of boiling water, and they hand plucked. And so if we have, like a couple of roosters or one of the things that happens with these Cornish cross, even the healthy ones, sometimes around week 6 or 7, all of a sudden they just can't stand up. And it's not an overweight thing. It's like a genetic thing that's triggered by eating too much food or whatever it is, but only a certain number of them are susceptible. And usually it'll happen 3 or 4 times out of 100 where they can't stand up. Well, once they can't stand up, they're done. So we will just take them at that point and process them. And we'll do it the old school way with the pot of boiling water, and almost boiling, to scald them about 150 degrees. You scald them and then hand pluck them just like our grandparents used to do. So we do that. And then as far as the lamb thing, I think there's enough of an interest in people learning to, like if you harvested a deer yourself, I'll show you how to skin it and cut it up like we did with your lamb.
Yep.
It's obviously, people have asked about bunnies too. And the same thing with processing rabbits. It's very different than a chicken because we as people have assigned a different value or
it's Easter bunny.
Something to a bunny versus a chicken versus a lamb. But they all have the same value as a living creature, and I treat them all with the same respect, and it affects me the same way every time.
Yeah, and I think when you get to be part of that process, you also don't waste any of the animal.
Yeah,
right.
When we process 150 chickens on a Saturday when we teach that class, and we literally have 2 5-gallon buckets of waste. That's it. It's a
and
bucket
that can be compost, or
it's a bucket of feed. I usually give it back to the woods. I take it out back, and it's gone the next day. Coyotes, birds. We've set up game cameras. We've had bald eagles come in.
Oh, that's amazing.
And hit the piles. So that's what we do with the waste. We kind of return it back to the land. Every once in a while, I'll have people come and get stuff for their dogs. We turn all of the gizzards, hearts, and livers into dog treats. We run them through the freeze dryer.
That's awesome.
Or the dehydrator. I mean, back to this whole label thing. Go look at what's in your dog treats that you buy at the grocery store. It's horrific.
Yeah.
So our dogs are getting...
all things dogs aren't meant to eat, right?
Exactly.
So much of this is like the lens that I use, and people might take this too literally, but the lens I use is, what would a hunter-gatherer have done or eaten? Like, that's the A+ standard, right? Now, I get it. I like that I have heat in my house, and I realize there's modern things, right? But what would we have eaten? Because we do not evolve that quickly. Right. So we're doing things that are making us sick. So maybe use that as the gold standard. And dogs weren't eating cornmeal or whatever.
Right.
A wolf isn't out there snacking on stabilizers, right? Food stabilizers. So yeah, it's a good standard. And if you could be having, livers and hearts and stuff like that for dog treats, it's a pretty darn good process.
Yeah, absolutely. Right? So.
And the eagles and the bears and the whoever else is getting to eat off that is amazing.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if people are interested, I'm going to put this in the beginning of the show as well, but Life and Liberty Farms, what's the best social platform for you?
Instagram and Facebook. I mean, I don't spend it really any time. That's the other thing I was going to mention, when people wonder, like, how much of your life does this take up? Like, what doing this? Like,
all of it.
What of your time? Well, I up until 4 months ago, I've had a full-time job this whole time. I got laid off, but I just got a new job again. But people at work would be like, how do you do this? How in the world do you manage this? I'm like, well, what do you do outside of work? Because I don't watch TV. I haven't watched TV since 2016, 17. Like, I couldn't tell you a movie. I mean, the last time I watched a movie was last week. Prior to that was, I don't know, a couple of years probably, but we have a friend's little girl that's staying with us, and we watched Moana or something. Like, I hadn't watched a movie in forever. But I don't watch TV. I don't play golf. I don't go to the movies. We don't go to the mall. We barely go to the grocery store once every other week to buy stuff. We grow all of our own food and most of our own vegetables. We don't currently have the greenhouse cranking, so we're not getting like fresh lettuce and things like that during the winter. So we hardly buy anything. I don't go to the gym. This is my farm, is my lifestyle, my gym membership, my fitness plan, my grocery store, my sanctuary. I mean, I can go out in the middle of the field and sit with my sheep and listen to the sounds of the sheep. I can't even tell you. Like it's
your therapist.
Yeah, 100%.
Right? And when you were talking before, I was thinking about that. Like when we got removed from this process, the other thing that we didn't know we were losing was the health benefits of being out in nature. And like when I think if the people that are Instagram followers, they know a lot of this stuff. The people that are straight podcast listeners probably haven't gotten this deep into my life or the personal side of things. But like we bought a property, and I found out 6 months after moving in that I had an apple orchard, and there was it looked like intentionally planted autumn olive bushes. And then I looked into it, like autumn olives, like the medicinal value.
It's a dangerous invasive species. It should be eradicated.
That I saw that, and then I also saw like the regenerative qualities it has to put nutrients in the soils, which meant, oh, that's why they planted these things intentionally in the apple orchard. Because you see like tree, autumn olive shrub, tree, and you're like, that's pretty intentional, right? Yes, nitrogen fixing, and a couple other things, and then like the health benefits of them. And I was out in this bush was just full of them. I was getting like gallon jars of them, but just out there with my son, like picking all these autumn olives in the woods, like it was like I was meditating, right? And then I would like eat some of them, and like just you getting all the tactile stuff and the sun and the like, it's just so invigorating. And like not only did we get the negative effects of modern food and lose the knowledge about growing the food, we also lost the opportunity to be out there and put your hands in soil and walk around in the woods and let it be your gym. And like I'm building a little bridge over the stream, and I want to do it by clearing like dead wood or to try and cut a trail. So anything I have to cut out, I'm using as a tree to go across the little brook, so then we can have it be a bike path. But I mean, it is a workout dragging logs through the woods by myself, right? Like it's better than any gym, right? And I need to do it more often.
I used to tease, like coworkers would say, oh, I hit the gym this morning, I did 100 reps or whatever. I'm like, well, yesterday I unloaded 6 tons of animal feed. Like that was 6 times 240 50-pound bags by hand that I unloaded and stacked. And like that was my workout for the day. And it's like, so my day. So back to like how long?
How much does that membership cost you to unload the?
Right.
Like, you're not paying for a gym. You're not indoors under white light. Right.
So we started a farm, like a legit business farm, and so we're almost to the point of break even, but we make money on the chickens. We make money when we raise pigs. So we'll raise 4 piglets. When we process them, we sell 2. We make about $1,000, and we fill our freezers with pork. So it's like we made $1,000, and we have all the pork we need for a year. Same thing with the chickens. We make money on the chickens, and we have 50, 60, 70 chickens to get us through the year in our freezer that were free. It was labor, so I don't really count that. But how do people get in touch? So they can find us on Instagram, Life and Liberty Farm. That automatically feeds over to Facebook. I haven't had a Facebook account since 2019 or 2020, but my kids have one that's for the farm, and it auto-populates over there. But that's essentially our model is grow this healthy food. My wife can go into our freezer, and she can pull out vacuum-sealed vegetables from last year or the year before, and meat that we raised ourselves, and she even has all of her own herbs, and she can make a whole dinner from our farm. Like it's amazing when every single thing in the stew came from our land. So that to me, you can't even put a price on that. Like, people are like, oh, it's so much work. I'm like, well, what's the alternative?
Yeah, there's just such a different feeling, even with like vegetables. Like, I would go out, and even living in the city, I would go out in my backyard and to be able to pull everything out and then go make dinner with what you produce.
Yeah, it's amazing.
The feeling is great, and this is like, it might sound like too much, but I would even like go out there like in my bare feet and have my feet in the dirt and pick the stuff and just be like, okay, I helped create this soil. I know there's not garbage in it. I know there's good bacteria in here. And to also, especially when my son was young, I would have him in there at, however many months, and he would love to just be in the garden and have the big tomatoes rubbing up against him. He would kind of hiding them, and like the value of that is amazing. And I was
gonna say, our society is so germophobic. You're letting your kid, he's barefoot, he's in the dirt. Like, but people come into the greenhouse, I pull out a carrot or a turnip. I'm like, you pick a turnip that's smaller than a tennis ball, that like a white purple top globe turnip that's the smaller than his. It's the most amazing, just raw. But I'd cut a piece of it. I'd just pull my pocket knife out of my pocket, and I'd go to hand it to someone, and they'd be like, "Is that knife clean?"
Yeah.
Here, I'm just bang the dirt off this carrot. I'm just gonna eat the carrot. It'd be a little gritty. All right, we can spray it off with the hose. Is that hose clean? Like people are so germophobic now. Everything has to be sanitized and clean. And
it's very interesting. Folks could look into what they call the hygiene hypothesis around the fact that by sterilizing it and everything and using sanitizers and spray on bleach stuff,
makes you less healthy, probably.
And they actually think that it contributes to causing allergies. So look up the hygiene hypothesis. It's Chris Kresser talks about it a lot. You'll see it through a lot of people, but it's something interesting, and there's value to getting dirty. But maybe we didn't talk about this ahead of time, so if you think this isn't okay, tell me. But if there are folks that are listening that are interested in the chicken thing, I wouldn't be opposed to getting a handful of listeners and people.
That'd be awesome.
Maybe we do all of us come up. We'll do it together, a chicken processing class, and then whether we go.
So if you wanted to, like, if people said, I'd like to get 10 of those, we can basically like pre-order a batch, and you and your guys could come up and spend 3 or 4 hours, and everybody could take home 10 chickens or something. We could work that out.
Yeah. Or if you only want one and you just want to go through that process, like we can figure a class out that way if 100%. Folks are interested. I think that would be fun. Or reach out to me, and this isn't Chad's full-time job, so it's not like he has this system set up where like, well, I'm just going to go to the website and I'm going to pick out the class out of it. Like, it doesn't work that way. This is someone who's doing this because he's passionate about it, wants to teach people about it, wants to feed his family, and it's not your traditional business. So if you're looking for we're not going to community college to take a class here. You're gonna be out there with Chad and his pocket knife doing this. So that's there, but please reach out to me if that's of interest, and then maybe we could even have a little fun after. And I'm not a big beer drinker, but if you want to meet up for drinks after or coffee before or whatever, I think that would be a lot of fun. And the last thing I'll say is, when you really get into this and you start to realize that, okay, I have this well-raised food, whether it's an animal or a vegetable, like even the bones, like there's all these minerals that are in those bones that we can't get from the soil anymore. Right. So when you see these things and you look at like, oh, well, how much magnesium is in broccoli or whatever, the calcium is in broccoli, they say, oh, it's this much. That's assuming that there's that in the soil. And if they're, hydroponic or something and threw a organic label on them, you're not getting that. We're not getting the minerals and the nutrients that we need. But if you are getting properly raised animals and vegetables and fruit, you are getting those nutrients. So those bones from those chickens or whatever go in the freezer until there's enough, and then there's broth. And that broth when it's done, you put it in the fridge, looks like Jell-O.
Yeah.
Right? And the amount of nutrients, and you experienced it with Deb in her gut health, like that replenishes and restores the gut lining by having that type of bone broth.
Yeah.
Right? And you use that to season things. It's just the richness and the flavor and the protein that's in there. It's wild. I've gone to the fact where I've looked at broth that you can get in those like cardboard containers at the grocery store, and you're like, oh, well, why is this broth cost $16 and this one costs $2? That doesn't make any sense. You flip them over and you're like, this one has 16 grams of protein in it. This one has 1. Right? So it's not the same. It has to do with the bones.
Yeah.
It has to do with how long have they been cooked. Like, are they slow cooked? Or like when I do my broth, it's sometimes 3 days of it being on the stove, and like keep adding water, and you put cider vinegar in and do it slow and let all those nutrients. It's a long process, but I could give you, 2 inches of my broth. You could have 10 gallons of the stuff from the grocery store, and it's not going to have half of the nutrients that's in there. So like that one bird should be an education, a meal, broth, dog treat. Like it should be it all, right?
What we can do too is usually about 20 of those broilers, my wife will completely part out. She'll legs, thighs, breasts, wings, all that, and you're left with a carcass that has a decent amount of meat scraps on it. But we can pressure cook one of those in the Instapot, and when you're done, you can use a potato masher and literally turn it into mush. Like there's no recognizable bones in there, and the dogs can eat that. I mean, it's just,
so many things.
Yeah, it's amazing. Right? You can, if you strained off all the broth first, well, then you got amazing broth, and then all that leftover stuff is going to the dogs or back to the chickens. You should see chickens eat chicken. Chickens love chicken. They will pick a chicken carcass clean like nothing. It's crazy.
Yep.
One of the things, kind of a closing thought, like people that come to see my farm, and so we're like a homestead farm. We're sort of like a farm business,
it's not a commercial
farm. We're producing food on a smaller scale, and we sell all of the extra stuff. But if you wanted to grow your own vegetables, you don't need a commercial sized greenhouse. We have a big greenhouse because it was for the business, but you can build a greenhouse out of 2x4s or like one of those versus shed things, and put clear panels on the roof and some contractor grade plastic on the sides, and then build a little hoop house in there, and then you've just duplicated what I said, and you could
on a much smaller
grow through the winter. You could raise a pig in your backyard. Like if you literally have a 1 acre lot, you can raise a pig healthy in a 30 by 30 foot pen. He's going to turn that 30 by 30 into the most fertile compost area for you to grow vegetables that you wouldn't believe. And the pork from that. And when people come and they see like where we raised our pigs, I'm trying to get fencing done in my woods so I can raise pigs in the woods. But when you see how we raise a pig, it's not exactly how I want to be raising pigs right now, but my pigs are super healthy and happy. And when you take one of my pork chops and put it on the grill, I challenge you to go to the grocery store and buy a pork chop and try to cook it on the grill.
Yeah.
But you cook one of my pork chops on the grill, it's like a Delmonico steak. Like you're not even sure, this is unbelievable. Is this pork? Like because it's growing that way. It's eating healthier, it's happier, it's not being pumped with antibiotics and trying to keep it healthy. That was a key takeaway for me from Omnivore's Dilemma, is when they raise those cows, they take the baby calves away from their moms out on the grassy plains and raise them in a food lot.
Yeah.
And they're knee deep in shit, and they're pumping them with vitamins and antibiotics to try to keep them from dying, and they're pumping them with bad, unhealthy food, and even feeding them bone meal and stuff that cows should never eat. Cows don't need to eat anything but grass.
Yep.
But pumping them with all this stuff that they shouldn't be eating, and it's like, we just got to get them. We got to get them until they're big enough so we can harvest them.
Oh yeah, it's straightly it's a spreadsheet.
Yeah.
Right. Like, hey, what's my cost input for feed? What's the longest? How can I get it in the minimum amount of days with the least amount of food going into them to get them to the biggest weight? Right. Like that's it. How a cow should live, how it feels, like what its conditions are, like that doesn't matter. Right.
Right.
That's not on their spreadsheet. And to your point, like, I'm not holding up your farm as like, oh, this is the mecca of how to do things. And I think people can get too idealistic and say, oh, well, I want my chickens completely free range and just eating worms and bugs and not having any feed. And I don't think those goats should be in that pen for those few hours. They should be out roam. Okay, well, that's paradise. And aim for that. Mm-hmm. Great. And having started to see more and more farms, I can look at, your farm and be like, wow, he does this really great. In my perfect world, I'd love to see him not give that particular feed to them or not have him over here. And then I go to this other farm and say, oh, wow, that person's getting the feed right, but I don't like what they're doing. But just as long as you have a farmer that's intention is to make things better, that's progress. So I think that anybody that does decide to do this should go there and think about the reality. Like, okay, so if that person can't do this ideal world that you have in your head that you think by getting biodynamic, regenerative, organic, whatever from Driscoll's, that's a fantasy. That's not real, first of all. And to think anybody's going to be able to do that and say, if we can't do that, then we shouldn't do anything. Okay, so if we shouldn't do that, then we should go to Shaw's, right? No, let's back people that are moving us directionally in the right way. Right. So I don't want people to think they're going to show up and be like, oh, wow, well, that's not how goats should be kept, or whatever their thinking is.
Yeah.
Like, we're moving the ball forward here.
Right.
And we have somebody that's trying to do the right thing and paying attention and caring about these things. And if you don't like dogs, don't come. Jet's get a couple of Guardian livestock dogs. They are awesome. They're like, ironically, they're like cuddle bugs, right? They come running out.
Chase bears, but they want loving too. Yeah.
Yeah. So like, I'll step out of the truck and all of a sudden they come bombing. And if you're not comfortable with dogs, you'll be like, holy shit. What is this
125-pound dogs. Yeah.
Yeah. Like bombing at you. And then they get there and they're friggin' wagging their tails. And you're like, all right, well, you're not so vicious.
Go on Instagram. If you're going to come visit me, go on Instagram first and you'll get a sort of a virtual tour and see the animals and the dogs and all that.
Awesome. Well, this was fantastic. Is there anything else you like? I'm wrapping it, but is there anything else that because I'm happy on my end?
Yeah,
is there anything else that you want to share?
I think we touched on pretty much everything. Like I said, don't let perfect be the enemy of good enough. Mm-hmm. Do the best you can with what you got where you're at. Those aren't my phrases. I got them from people on the internet. Mm-hmm. But you can do a lot if you want to kind of begin this journey to like food freedom. Get half a dozen chickens. So you buy your little chicks at Tractor Supply, and all of a sudden, 4 months later, they lay an egg. You're like, holy shit! Wait, they're giving us eggs too? Like, this is freaking crazy. This is amazing. And
timely with the current state of things.
Yeah, and you eat one of these eggs, and I kind of joke with people like, the shit eggs at Walmart now are $5 a dozen. We were still selling our eggs for like $4 a dozen. We've raised to 5 this past year, and we're probably going to go to 6. The feed costs have gone up a little bit, but I'm like, if you're paying $8 for what you think are the good eggs at Walmart, come buy my eggs, and my chickens are free range, and you crack one in the skillet next to your Walmart egg, you won't.
Yeah, or your Whole Food eggs.
Or whatever. You won't believe the difference. Even the cage-free organic eggs, like it's so different. But so, I joke that my eggs probably cost me about 10 cents a piece. Like if I figure out in the wintertime when they're eating most of my food, like they're getting most of their feed from me, I still only feed them about half of what they need a day. And I've got all my geese and all my ducks and all my chickens all free ranging together. Mm-hmm. In the summertime, I give them like a third of what they need, and they just all browse and forage. My geese will mow an acre lawn. Like it's unbelievable how well they control that. Yeah. So I try to keep them off of it because I started from woods, so I'm trying to get pasture developed for my sheep that I can rotationally graze sheep and goats. Mm-hmm. But so there's somewhere I was going with that, but you can start on a very small scale with some chickens. If you get a rooster, people joke when they come to my farm and they hear the roosters in the middle of the day. The roosters crow all the time, but I don't even hear them anymore. It's like white noise. If you live in suburbia or in a city, like ambulances, like you don't even hear them anymore. Sirens, it's white noise to you. I've never heard a siren at my house ever in 6 years that we've lived. I've never heard a siren. We live miles from pavement on a dirt road. Never heard a siren. So I don't even notice the roosters anymore. But if you get a rooster, then all of your eggs are going to be fertilized. And if you incubate them, well, then there's your meat source. Yep. With half a dozen chickens and a rooster, you could easily put a whole year's worth of meat in the freezer just from your backyard. If you like lamb and goat, you can buy some 9-week-old lambs and raise them, feed them hay. Like maybe you don't have big pasture, but you can keep them in a decent sized pen, and they can give them some rocks or stumps to jump on and play on, and feed them hay. You don't have to give them grain. You can have grass-fed lamb. Make sure you know where your hay is coming from, so it doesn't have the shit in it.
Yeah, there's a farmer over in Temple, and he's like fanatical about his hay.
Yeah. Yeah,
and that's great, and that's why I like to get stuff from him, right?
Yeah. So even on that scale, I mean, if your family likes lamb, we'll raise a couple of lambs yourself. Then you know how they lived, how they died. I teach people like to cut up a lamb yourself. You're not going to have beautiful lamb chops and roasts, but I'll show you how to do it, and then you don't even need to pay a butcher. But there are plenty of local, we call custom exempt butchers, charge you about $150 to vacuum seal a lamb. Like you go
into all the cuts you want.
Into all the cuts you want. There's no USDA inspection. It's called custom exempt. So those guys, they'll come right to your house. So you don't even have to like pick the lamb up and traumatize it, transporting it, you know, in a car or a truck or a cage or whatever. So that's an option. Turkeys, we raise turkeys, and I tell people this too. When you come and get a turkey from us or raise it yourself, like you won't even believe the difference. I mean, it's hard to even wrap your head around how different.
Yeah, we had one of yours this year.
It's unbelievable. So the same thing with the ducks, rabbits. I mean, rabbits are super easy, maybe a little bit more difficult to process, kill. Anytime I say process, put a little asterisk there.
Yeah.
It's kill, turn it into food. But rabbits are super easy. They're super easy to clean. You don't need a plucker. You don't need a scalder. You don't need any of that stuff.
Yeah.
Really easy to clean them, and they taste just like chicken. And everybody jokes about that, but if you tried our chicken stew, you'd say, this is the best chicken stew I've ever had, because it's rabbit.
Yeah.
So there's so many options to get started on a really small scale. And once you start eating healthy, like my wife and I will go out on a date and go to a nice restaurant, and we feel like shit. Like, what was in that food? It was the oil, or it was the whatever it was, the process.
Whatever it is.
We just so
shelf stable.
We're so corrupted, like in a good way now. Eating so clean, we don't buy anything in a box.
Yep.
Almost everything is all just whole foods. Most of it from ourselves.
This is fantastic.
Big difference. Yeah. Appreciate the time.
Yeah, no, and I'm hoping everybody hears this message loud and clear, and we're starting a revolution.
Awesome. Sounds good. Thanks, Chad. Great. Thanks.